The massive creature lay curled in the deepest cavern of Mount Zerion, its crystalline scales dulled by centuries of shame. Zephyros had once been the pride of the Draconic Empire, a being whose wings could carry him across star systems in mere days. Now those same wings hung limp and useless at his sides, magnificent but broken. 2,000 years had passed since the great curse struck him down during the final battle against the Shadow Fleet. The enemy's dying weapon had severed something fundamental in his being, not his flesh but his very connection to flight itself. While his body remained unharmed, his wings had become nothing more than decorative appendages, beautiful reminders of what he could never do again. The other dragons had tried everything. Ancient magic, quantum healers, even cybernetic replacements. Nothing worked. The curse ran deeper than bone and sinew, deeper than neural pathways and energy channels. It existed in the space between will and action, making flight not impossible but simply incomprehensible to his mind. His fellow dragons eventually stopped visiting. They meant well, but seeing them soar effortlessly through the skies while he remained earthbound was a torture beyond words. The great libraries held no answers. The wisest scholars could only shake their heads in pity, and the healing temples offered nothing but empty sympathy. Zephyros had retreated to this cave system on the remote world of Theron 7, far from civilization and witnesses to his humiliation. The planet was barely charted, its human colonists few and scattered. Dragons were myths here, legends whispered around campfires. It was perfect for hiding. The cavern stretched for miles underground, carved by ancient lava flows into a labyrinth of chambers and tunnels. Zephyros had made the largest chamber his home, filling it with treasures collected over millennia of flight. Golden artifacts from dead civilizations, crystalline formations that sang in harmonious frequencies, and books written in languages that no longer existed anywhere in the galaxy. But even surrounded by beauty and knowledge, the weight of his loss pressed down like a physical thing. Every morning he would unfurl his wings, stretch them to their full 100-foot span, and feel nothing. No lift, no connection to the air currents, no understanding of how something so natural had become so foreign. The irony was not lost on him that dragons were meant to be symbols of power and freedom, yet he was the most powerless and trapped being in the known universe. His strength could level mountains, his fire could melt starship hulls, his intellect could solve cosmic equations that baffled supercomputers. None of it mattered when he could not do the one thing that defined his very essence. Local weather patterns had begun to change around Mount Zerion, responding to his deep melancholy. Storms gathered more frequently, rain fell harder, and the winds carried an edge of sadness that the human settlers noticed but could not explain. Some spoke of a presence in the mountain, a guardian spirit that watched over the region with ancient, sorrowful eyes. They were not entirely wrong. From his cavern, Zephyros could sense everything that happened within a 100-mile radius. He felt the pulse of every living creature, heard their thoughts when emotions ran high, and sometimes even influenced their dreams without meaning to. The humans fascinated him with their brevity and intensity, living entire lifetimes in what seemed like heartbeats to his immortal perception. One human in particular had caught his attention recently, a young engineer named Marcus Chen, who had arrived 6 months ago to establish a communication relay station. Unlike the farmers and miners who made up most of the colony, Marcus possessed a curious mind that never seemed to rest. He asked questions that others ignored, studied problems from angles that others missed, and refused to accept that something was impossible simply because everyone said so. Marcus worked alone most days, calibrating quantum transmitters and debugging complex software protocols, but in his spare time, he would hike the foothills of Mount Zerion, taking readings with strange instruments and muttering to himself about atmospheric anomalies and gravitational fluctuations. He had noticed the same weather patterns that worried the other colonists, but instead of fear, Marcus showed fascination. The dragon found himself looking forward to these visits, even though the human never came close to discovering the cave entrance. There was something appealing about Marcus's relentless optimism and his absolute refusal to give up when faced with a challenge. These were qualities that Zephyros had once possessed, before 2 millennia of failure had worn them away. Perhaps that was why, on this particular storm-lashed evening, Zephyros made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of remaining hidden in the depths, he began the long climb toward the surface. If nothing else, watching this persistent human work might provide a brief distraction from the endless cycle of shame and self-pity that had become his existence. The storm raged overhead as massive claws found purchase on stone walls, carrying a broken legend toward an encounter that would change everything. Marcus Chen wiped rain from his scanner display and swore under his breath. The readings made no sense according to everything he knew about atmospheric physics. Energy signatures that shouldn't exist were emanating from somewhere inside Mount Zerion, creating interference patterns that stretched for miles in every direction. His colleagues at the relay station thought he was wasting his time chasing sensor ghosts. But Marcus had spent 5 years troubleshooting quantum communication arrays across the frontier. He knew the difference between equipment malfunction and genuine anomalies. Something was definitely happening in that mountain, something that defied conventional explanation. The storm hammered the mountainside with unusual fury, as if the weather itself was angry about something. Lightning struck the same peaks repeatedly, drawn by forces that his instruments couldn't identify. Marcus had never seen electromagnetic patterns like these, not in any textbook or field manual. He adjusted his equipment settings and tried a different scanning frequency. The results made him stop breathing for a moment. There was definitely a massive hollow space inside the mountain, far larger than any natural cave system should be. More troubling, the thermal reading suggested something alive was moving around in there, something with a body temperature that would kill most known life forms. Marcus had been raised on frontier worlds where common sense meant assuming any unexplained phenomenon was probably dangerous, but his engineering instincts were stronger than his survival instincts. Whatever was in that mountain represented a puzzle that demanded solving, even if the solution might be terrifying. A sound cut through the storm that made every hair on his body stand up. It was like music and thunder combined, a deep harmonic resonance that seemed to come from the mountain itself, rather than any specific location. The sound bypassed his ears and went straight to his bones, vibrating through his skeleton in frequencies that human vocal cords could never produce. That was when he saw the glow. High up on the mountainside, barely visible through the rain and darkness, something was emanating a soft blue-white light. It pulsed slowly like a massive heartbeat made of luminescence. Marcus focused his scanner on the light source and nearly dropped the device when he saw the energy readings spike off the scale. Whatever was up there was generating enough power to run a small city. The electromagnetic signature was unlike anything in the databases, combining elements of quantum field manipulation with what looked suspiciously like biological neural activity. It was as if someone had built a fusion reactor inside a living brain and taught it to think. Marcus made a decision that his more cautious friends would have called suicidal. He started climbing toward the light, using his scanner to navigate the treacherous terrain in the storm. Each step upward brought stronger energy readings and stranger atmospheric effects. The air itself seemed to shimmer around him, and twice he could have sworn he heard something like whispered words in languages he didn't recognize. The climb took him 3 hours through increasingly dangerous terrain. Rain had turned the mountain paths into rivers of mud and loose stone. Lightning struck close enough to leave his ears ringing, and his vision spotted with afterimages. But the glow ahead grew steadily brighter, and the scanner readings indicated he was approaching something extraordinary. When he finally reached a ledge where he could see the light source clearly, Marcus forgot all about the storm. A cave entrance gaped in the mountainside, easily 50 feet wide and twice as tall. The blue-white glow was coming from somewhere deep inside, casting shifting shadows that suggested vast spaces beyond. But what made him stare in disbelief was the perfectly smooth stone around the entrance, carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. This was not a natural cave. Someone or something had built this place, using construction techniques that made human engineering look primitive. The stonework was so precise that rainwater ran off it in perfectly controlled channels, creating a subtle but complex drainage system that kept the entrance dry despite the raging storm. Marcus approached the entrance cautiously, scanner held in front of him like a shield. The energy readings were now so intense that his equipment was struggling to process them. Whatever was inside was generating enough power to be detected from orbit, yet somehow the emissions were contained within the mountain itself. The engineering required for that kind of containment was theoretically possible, but practically impossible with any known technology. The glow pulsed brighter as he stepped closer, almost as if it was responding to his presence. Marcus felt a strange sensation, like being observed by something vast and ancient. The feeling should have sent him running back down the mountain, but instead it made him more curious. Intelligence was watching him, and that intelligence was choosing not to harm him. He called out into the cavern, feeling slightly foolish but needing to announce himself somehow. His voice echoed strangely in the vast space, returning as harmonics and overtones that sounded almost like responses. The glow pulsed once, twice, then settled into a steady radiance that seemed almost welcoming. Marcus took a deep breath and crossed the threshold into the unknown. His scanner immediately detected temperature changes, air currents that suggested enormous chambers ahead, and trace chemical signatures that included several elements not found anywhere else in this star system. Most intriguingly, he was picking up what looked like controlled gravity fields, areas where the normal pull of the planet was being artificially modified. The tunnel stretched ahead into blue-white mystery, carved from living rock with mathematical precision that made his engineer's soul ache with appreciation. Whatever had built this place understood principles of construction that human science was only beginning to discover. More than that, they had created something beautiful as well as functional, turning mere architecture into art. As Marcus ventured deeper into the mountain, following passages that spiraled downward in perfect geometric curves, he began to realize that this discovery would change everything, not just for him, but for humanity's understanding of what was possible in the universe. He was walking into the greatest mystery of his lifetime, armed with nothing but curiosity and a determination to solve problems that others called impossible. Behind him, the storm raged on, but ahead lay answers to questions he hadn't even known how to ask. The tunnel opened into a chamber so vast that Marcus's scanner couldn't find the far walls. The blue-white glow he had been following now revealed its source, and Marcus fell to his knees in shock. Floating in the center of the enormous space, surrounded by treasures that glittered like captured stars, was a dragon. Not the mythical creature from Earth's ancient stories, but something far more magnificent and alien. The being was easily 200 feet long, with scales that seemed to be made of living crystal reflecting the chamber's soft light. Its head was the size of a shuttlecraft, crowned with elegant horns that curved back along a skull designed for intelligence as much as power. But what struck Marcus most were the wings, massive beyond comprehension yet hanging limp and motionless at the creature's sides. Zephyros opened eyes like molten gold and regarded the tiny human who had stumbled into his domain. For a moment, neither being moved. The dragon had expected many reactions to his presence, but the human's response surprised him. Instead of running or cowering, Marcus was staring with what looked like wonder and scientific fascination. "You're real," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible in the vast space. "The energy signatures, the gravitational anomalies, they were all coming from you." The dragon's head tilted slightly, an expression that somehow conveyed both amusement and curiosity. When Zephyros spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber like controlled thunder, each word precisely formed despite the alien vocal anatomy. "You are not the first human to find this place, but you are the first to approach with instruments rather than weapons or offerings. Most interesting. I am Zephyros, last of the Void Flight dragons, though flight is no longer within my capability." Marcus struggled to process what he was experiencing. First contact with an alien intelligence in a cave system that defied physics, with a creature that spoke perfect galactic standard and radiated enough energy to power a space station. His engineering mind latched onto the one thing he could understand. "Your wings," he said, pulling out his scanner and adjusting settings. "May I?" The energy pattern suggests some kind of neural disruption, but the physical structure appears undamaged. Zephyros was taken aback by the directness of the request. Most beings who encountered him focused on his size, his obvious power, or the legendary treasures surrounding him. This human was treating him like a fascinating technical problem that needed solving. "You may examine them, though I warn you that thousands of healers and technicians have tried for 2 millennia. The curse that binds me is beyond their understanding, perhaps beyond understanding itself." Marcus approached one of the massive wings, scanner working overtime to process the readings. What he found made no sense according to conventional biology or engineering. The wing structure was more sophisticated than anything humanity had ever designed, with multiple layers of muscle, tendon, and what looked like organic superconductors. Quantum-scale mechanisms controlled every membrane and joint, creating a flight system that could theoretically operate in vacuum as well as atmosphere. "This is incredible," Marcus muttered, forgetting protocol in his excitement. "Your wings aren't just for atmospheric flight, are they? These quantum field manipulators, the gravitational resonance chambers, you can actually fly through space itself, but something's blocking the neural pathways. It's like having a quantum computer with a severed power cable." Zephyros felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: hope. This human understood his wings better in minutes than most experts had after months of study. Marcus was asking the right questions, looking at the problem from angles that others had missed. "The Shadow Fleet's final weapon," Zephyros explained, lowering his great head closer to where Marcus worked. "It did not damage my body, but somehow severed my connection to flight itself. I can understand the theory, I remember every sensation, but when I attempt to activate the systems, nothing responds. It is as if part of my mind simply no longer exists." Marcus continued his scans, muttering to himself as he worked. Quantum entanglement disruption, maybe? Or some kind of synaptic interference pattern. Wait, these readings are strange. There's definitely blockage in the neural pathways, but it's not biological. It's more like a software lock, a pattern that's preventing normal function. Software? Zephyros repeated the unfamiliar term. Programming. Instructions that tell systems how to operate. If I'm reading this correctly, something has inserted false instructions into your neural network. Commands that override your natural ability to fly. It's not that you've lost the ability. It's that you're being actively prevented from using it. The dragon's eyes blazed brighter as understanding dawned. "You speak of the curse as if it were a machine that could be repaired rather than magic that must be endured." Marcus looked up from his scanner, grinning despite the surreal situation. "Magic is just science we don't understand yet. And I've spent my career fixing broken quantum systems. This might be the most complex system I've ever encountered, but the principles should be the same. Find the error, isolate it, and develop a workaround." "Impossible," Zephyros said, but his voice carried hope rather than despair. "If it could be fixed through technological means, surely someone would have succeeded by now." "Maybe they were looking at it wrong," Marcus replied, returning to his scans. "Dragons think in terms of magic and curses. Other species probably tried to fix it like a medical condition. But if I'm right, this is an engineering problem. Someone hacked your flight systems, and hacks can be undone if you know what you're looking for." Marcus spent the next several hours mapping the neural pathways in Zephyros's wings, documenting energy flows and quantum field variations, with the dedication of someone who had found his life's work. The dragon watched in fascination as this tiny human treated his greatest shame as merely an interesting technical challenge. "Your approach is unlike any I have encountered," Zephyros observed. "You show no fear, no awe, no desire for treasure or favor. Why do you help me?" Marcus paused in his work, considering the question seriously. "Because you're broken and I fix things. It's what I do. Besides, if I can figure out how your flight systems work, imagine what humanity could learn about advanced propulsion. This could revolutionize space travel for everyone. And if you succeed in restoring my flight, what would you ask in return?" "Let me study the process," Marcus said immediately. "Document everything, understand how it works, maybe even adapt the principles for human use. The knowledge alone would be payment beyond measure." Zephyros found himself genuinely laughing for the first time in centuries, a sound like distant thunder rolling through crystal caves. This human was asking for the one thing the dragon was most eager to give: hope that his condition could be understood and overcome. "Very well, Marcus Chen of the relay station. Show me what human engineering can accomplish where draconic magic has failed. Teach me to fly again, and I will teach you the secrets of the stars." 3 weeks had passed since Marcus first discovered Zephyros in the crystal chamber. The relay station's automated systems ran themselves while Marcus spent every available moment in the mountain, analyzing the most complex biological machine he had ever encountered. His small camp in the cavern's side chamber was cluttered with equipment, notebooks filled with calculations, and half-eaten meals forgotten in moments of breakthrough. The dragon had become more than a subject of study. Their conversations stretched through the nights as Marcus worked, covering topics from quantum mechanics to philosophy. Zephyros possessed knowledge accumulated over millennia, while Marcus brought fresh perspectives and an engineer's practical approach to problems that others treated as mystical mysteries. "Show me the flight initiation sequence again," Marcus requested, adjusting his newest piece of jury-rigged equipment. He had combined his scanner with components cannibalized from the relay station, creating a device that could monitor quantum fields at the neural level. Zephyros extended his wings to their full span, the magnificent membranes catching the chamber's light like stained glass windows. The dragon closed his eyes and attempted what had once been as natural as breathing. Marcus watched the scanner readings carefully, noting the exact moment when the process failed. There, Marcus pointed to a spike in the display. Do you feel that? The interference pattern starts at neural junction 77 alpha and cascades through the entire network in 0.3 seconds. It's like a virus that activates whenever you try to engage the flight systems. I feel resistance, Zephyros admitted, frustration clear in his voice, as if the very idea of flight becomes incomprehensible the moment I attempt it. The knowledge exists, but it transforms into confusion whenever I reach for it. Marcus nodded, making notes on his tablet. Classic software attack pattern. The weapon didn't just damage your flight systems, it installed a counter program designed to trigger whenever you tried to use them. But here's the thing about hostile code. It has to follow rules, and rules can be broken. Over the following days, Marcus developed what he called the bypass theory. If the interference pattern was indeed an artificial construct, then it should be possible to route around it using alternate neural pathways. The dragon's brain was vastly more complex than any human computer, with redundant systems and multiple processing channels that could theoretically handle the same functions. We need to train your brain to use different routes to the same destination, Marcus explained, pointing to a three-dimensional neural map he had projected in the air using modified holographic equipment, like taking side streets when the main highway is blocked. The destination is the same, but the path is different. Zephyros studied the projection with growing excitement. You propose to reprogram my own mind? Not reprogram, redirect. Your brain already has the capability. We just need to establish new neural pathways that the interference pattern doesn't recognize. It's going to require patience and practice, but I think it's possible. They started with simple exercises. Marcus had Zephyros focus on individual wing muscles, activating them in sequences that bypassed the normal flight control centers. It was painstaking work, like learning to walk again by thinking about every step, but gradually they began to see results. The breakthrough came during their 4th week together. Marcus had been studying the quantum field patterns when he noticed something unusual in the scanner readings. During their bypass exercises, Zephyros was generating field fluctuations that matched theoretical flight dynamics, even though his wings weren't actually moving. You're doing it, Marcus said excitedly. Look at these readings. Your wing systems are responding. They're just not connecting to the physical movement controls. The interference pattern is only blocking the final stage of the process. This discovery led to a new approach. Instead of trying to bypass the interference entirely, Marcus proposed working around it. They would use the alternative neural pathways to build up flight potential, then release it all at once in a burst that happened too quickly for the interference pattern to react. Think of it like a capacitor discharge, Marcus explained. We charge up the system slowly using the back channels, then release everything through the normal pathways before the virus can activate. It should only take microseconds, not enough time for the counter program to respond. Zephyros was skeptical, but willing to try anything that offered hope. They spent days practicing the technique, building up quantum field potential through the bypass pathways while keeping the main systems dormant. Marcus monitored every reading, adjusting the timing and field strength with the precision of someone debugging critical software. The theory is sound, Zephyros admitted after another failed attempt. I can feel the power building in the alternative channels, but when I try to discharge it through the flight systems, the interference activates immediately. We need more speed, Marcus muttered, studying the data. The discharge has to happen faster than neural transmission rates. That's physically impossible unless... He stopped, staring at his calculations with growing excitement. Unless what? Zephyros prompted. Unless we use quantum entanglement to bypass the neural pathways entirely. Your wing systems have quantum components, right? What if we could establish direct quantum connections between the bypass channels and the flight controls? No neural transmission, no opportunity for interference. It was a radical idea that required Marcus to build an entirely new piece of equipment. He worked for 3 straight days without sleep, combining quantum communication components from the relay station with crystalline elements that Zephyros provided from his treasure collection. The resulting device looked like a cross between a medical scanner and an alien artifact. "This is completely theoretical," Marcus warned as he positioned the device near Zephyros's primary wing joint. "I'm basically trying to quantum tunnel your thoughts directly into your flight systems. It could work perfectly, or it could do absolutely nothing. Or it could kill me," Zephyros added helpfully. "Well, yes, there's that possibility too. Are you sure you want to try this?" Zephyros looked at his useless wings, then at the human who had given him more hope than he had felt in 2 millennia. "Marcus Chen, you have already given me the greatest gift possible, the belief that my condition can be solved rather than simply endured. Whatever the risk, it is worth taking." Marcus activated the quantum interface and began the carefully rehearsed sequence. Build up power in the bypass channels. Establish quantum entanglement with the flight systems. Then release everything through the artificial connection faster than the interference pattern could respond. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the chamber filled with a sound like singing crystal as Zephyros's wings began to glow with their own inner light. The massive membranes trembled, lifted slightly, then suddenly snapped to full extension with mathematical precision. Zephyros floated upward, his wings finally responding to his will for the first time in 2,000 years. The joy in his golden eyes was beyond description as he rose toward the chamber's ceiling, quantum fields rippling around him like visible music. "It works," he whispered, then roared with triumph that shook the entire mountain. "By the ancient stars, it works. I can fly again." The first flight beyond the cave was a moment that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come. Zephyros emerged from Mount Zerion like a living constellation, his crystalline scales catching the light of 3 moons as he soared through the night sky above. Theron 7. The quantum wake of his passage created aurora, displays that painted the heavens in colors that had no names. Marcus watched from the mountain's peak, his heart pounding with excitement and pride. The bypass system was working perfectly, allowing Zephyros to fly with all the grace and power that had made dragons legendary. But more than that, the joy radiating from the great creature was infectious, filling Marcus with a satisfaction deeper than any engineering achievement of his career. "The sensation is indescribable," Zephyros called down, his voice carrying clearly through the thin air. "It is not merely movement but a reunion with my true self. You have given me back my soul, Marcus Chen." The dragon executed a series of aerial maneuvers that defied physics, demonstrating flight capabilities that made human spacecraft look clumsy by comparison. He could hover motionless against hurricane winds, accelerate to hypersonic speeds in seconds, and change direction with precision that ignored momentum and inertia. Most impressively, he began generating small wormholes, stepping through space itself to appear miles away in the blink of an eye. "How is that possible?" Marcus shouted up at him. "Dragonflight was never merely about moving through air," Zephyros explained, settling onto a nearby peak with delicate precision despite his massive size. "We manipulate the fundamental forces that govern space and time. Watch closely." The dragon extended his wings and began a complex sequence of movements that seemed to bend reality around him. Space twisted visibly, creating a tunnel of distorted starlight that stretched toward the system's outer planets. With a single wing beat, Zephyros vanished into the tunnel only to reappear moments later from the opposite direction. "I have just traveled to the edge of this solar system and back," he announced casually. "A journey that would take your fastest ship several days. This is why dragons were once the galaxy's greatest explorers and messengers. We could cross vast distances in moments, carrying knowledge and trade between distant worlds." Marcus stared in amazement, his engineer's mind racing with the implications. The applications for human space travel would be revolutionary. No more years-long journeys between star systems, no more limits on exploration and colonization. You could transform our entire civilization. "Indeed," Zephyros agreed, settling more comfortably on the mountainside. "But first we must ensure that the bypass system is stable and permanent. I do not wish to lose this gift again, and you deserve recognition for accomplishing what none thought possible." They spent the following weeks testing and refining the quantum interface system. Marcus documented every aspect of the process, creating detailed technical specifications that would allow other engineers to understand and replicate his work. Meanwhile, Zephyros practiced increasingly complex flight maneuvers, regaining abilities that had been locked away for 2 millennia. The dragon's joy was infectious, but it was tempered by a growing sense of responsibility. He had been given a second chance at his true nature, and he was determined not to waste it. During their conversations, Zephyros began sharing knowledge that had been accumulated over centuries of exploration, describing worlds and civilizations that humanity had never encountered. There are wonders beyond your imagination waiting in the deep galaxy, he told Marcus one evening as they watched the aurora displays created by his earlier flights. Species that exist as pure energy, living planets that sing in harmonics spanning centuries, ancient machines left by races that ascended beyond physical existence millennia ago. Dragons were the bridges between these wonders and younger civilizations like your own. Marcus noted the past tense. The Shadow Fleet War decimated our people, Zephyros explained sadly. I am one of perhaps a dozen dragons still alive in this galaxy, and the others have withdrawn from galactic affairs. They have lost hope, choosing isolation over the risk of further loss. But you have shown me that hope can be restored, that the impossible can become possible through determination and ingenuity. What will you do now? Marcus asked. Zephyros was quiet for a long moment, his golden eyes reflecting the distant stars. I will remember what it means to be a dragon. Not just the flight, but the purpose. We were explorers, teachers, bridges between worlds. Perhaps it is time to resume that role. And the other dragons? They will need to see that flight can be restored before they will believe. I must find them, share what you have taught me, offer them the same hope you have given me. Some may be too lost in despair to accept help, but others... Zephyros trailed off, then turned to Marcus with sudden intensity. Come with me. What? You solved a problem that defeated the greatest minds of multiple species. You approached an impossible situation with fresh perspective and practical solutions. The galaxy needs that kind of thinking, especially now when so many civilizations face challenges they believe are insurmountable. Marcus felt his heart racing at the implications. You're talking about leaving Theron 7, traveling to other star systems, meeting alien civilizations that humanity has never contacted. I'm talking about becoming the first human dragon friend in recorded history. Together we could restore the dragons and revolutionize space travel for countless species. Your bypass techniques could solve problems beyond just my flight capabilities. Quantum interference is a common issue across many technologies. The offer was tempting beyond words, but Marcus had to be practical. I have obligations here, contracts with the colonial administration. I can't just disappear into space on an adventure, no matter how amazing it sounds. Zephyros smiled, an expression that somehow worked despite his alien features. Marcus, my friend, you have given me the ability to cross galactic distances in moments. A quick trip to your administrative centers to discuss contract modifications would take perhaps an hour. I suspect they will be very interested in the commercial applications of dragonflight technology. Over the next few days, they developed a plan that would satisfy both Marcus's obligations and their shared desire to help other dragons. Marcus would take a leave of absence from his engineering position, officially listed as research and development work for advanced propulsion systems. In reality, he would travel with Zephyros to locate other dragons and offer them the same hope of restored flight. It won't be easy, Zephyros warned as they prepared for their first journey together. Some dragons have become bitter and hostile after centuries of flightlessness. Others have retreated so far from galactic civilization that finding them will be a challenge in itself. And there are still remnants of the Shadow Fleet scattered across the dark regions of space. Sounds like the kind of impossible problem I specialize in, Marcus replied, checking his equipment one final time. Besides, if we can restore even a few dragons to flight, think about what that could mean for the galaxy. Ancient knowledge preserved, civilizations reconnected, technologies shared. It's worth any risk. As dawn broke over Theron 7, dragon and human prepared for a journey that would take them across the galaxy, in search of hope, healing, and the restoration of wonder to a universe that had forgotten how to dream. The journey to find the other dragons took Marcus and Zephyros across star systems that human eyes had never seen. They traveled through wormholes that Zephyros created with casual ease, stepping between distant galaxies as if crossing city blocks. Each transit left Marcus breathless with wonder and slight nausea from the reality-bending experience. Their first destination was Ashkeleth Prime, a dead world orbiting a dying star where 3 dragons had reportedly taken refuge after the Shadow Fleet War. The planet's surface was covered in crystal formations that sang in the stellar wind, creating haunting melodies that spoke of ancient loss and forgotten glory. Morvac Thessarian, and young Keth should be here, Zephyros explained as they descended through the thin atmosphere. They were among the most severely affected by the curse, completely unable to attempt flight for the past 15 centuries. They found the dragons in a vast crystal cave that had been shaped into a place of mourning. The three were enormous even by draconic standards, but they lay motionless on the cavern floor like discarded sculptures. Their scales had lost their luster, and their wings were folded tight against their bodies in permanent resignation. Zephyros? Morvac raised his great head slowly, golden eyes dim with despair. Why do you torment us with your presence? Have we not suffered enough without reminders of what we once were? Look closer, old friend, Zephyros replied, hovering 20 feet above the cavern floor with perfect control. See what walks beside me. The three dragons noticed Marcus for the first time, and their reaction was immediate confusion followed by growing amazement as they realized what Zephyros's flight implied. Impossible, whispered Thessarian, the largest of the three. The curse cannot be broken. We have tried everything, consulted every sage, pleaded with every deity that still listens to draconic prayers. The curse remains, Zephyros admitted, settling gracefully onto the crystal floor. But this human engineer has shown me how to bypass it entirely. Marcus Chen, may I present three of the finest void flight dragons ever to soar between the stars? Marcus stepped forward nervously, acutely aware that he was probably the first human these ancient beings had ever encountered. The bypass technique uses quantum entanglement to route neural signals around the interference pattern. It requires some technological assistance, but the results are permanent once the new pathways are established. A human solved the curse of the Shadow Fleet? Keth asked, the youngest of the three at barely 8,000 years old. How is this possible? By not thinking of it as a curse, Marcus explained, unpacking his equipment. The Shadow Fleet weapon was technology, not magic. It created an artificial interference pattern in your neural systems. Technology can be countered with better technology. Over the following days, Marcus worked with each dragon individually, mapping their neural pathways and customizing the bypass techniques for their unique physiologies. The process was more complex than it had been with Zephyros, as each dragon's mind had adapted differently to centuries of flightlessness. Morvac was the most challenging case. His despair ran so deep that he had almost lost the desire to fly, even if it became possible. Marcus had to work carefully, rebuilding not just the neural pathways but the dragon's belief that flight was worth pursuing. I have forgotten what it feels like to want the sky, Morvac admitted during one of their sessions. The grief has become so familiar that I fear losing it might leave me empty. Grief for something lost isn't the same as joy for something regained, Marcus replied, adjusting the quantum interface settings. You're not losing your grief, you're adding hope alongside it. They can coexist until the hope grows strong enough to heal the loss. When Morvac finally took flight for the first time in 15 centuries, his roar of triumph shattered crystal formations throughout the cavern. The sound was picked up by the planet's crystalline structures and echoed across continents, a song of victory that reached into space itself. Thessarian and Keth followed soon after, each restoration more miraculous than the last. Soon the dead world of Ashkleth Prime was alive with the songs of dragons learning to fly again, their joy creating aurora displays that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Three more, Zephyros said to Marcus as they prepared to leave for their next destination. But the word will spread now. Dragons have means of communication that span galactic distances. By the time we reach the other survivors, they will already know that restoration is possible. Their next stops confirmed Zephyros's prediction. Dragons who had hidden themselves in the dark spaces between stars began emerging, drawn by rumors that the impossible had become reality. Some were skeptical until they saw the restored dragons flying again. Others wept with relief when Marcus's scanners confirmed that the same solution would work for them. But not all encounters were positive. On the frozen world of Zareth 9, they found Vorthak the Ancient, a dragon so old that he remembered the galaxy's formation. The curse had left him not just flightless, but insane with rage, blaming himself for the Shadow Fleet's victory. You bring false hope, Vorthak snarled, his breath creating walls of superheated plasma that forced Marcus to hide behind Zephyros's protective fields. I led the final assault against the Shadow Fleet. I failed to protect my people, and this curse is my just punishment. I will not be freed from the consequences of my failure. The curse wasn't punishment, Marcus called out from behind his shelter. It was a weapon designed to break your spirits as much as your abilities. Every day you choose to remain grounded, you're letting the Shadow Fleet win. You dare lecture me, human child? I dare tell you that your people need you flying again. Every dragon that chooses to stay cursed makes the Shadow Fleet's victory more complete. Your guilt is keeping their weapon active long after their death. The words struck home in a way that centuries of argument had not. Vorthak's rage cooled to consideration, then to grudging acceptance. His restoration was the most difficult yet, requiring Marcus to essentially rebuild entire sections of neural pathways that had been damaged by self-inflicted interference patterns. When Vorthak finally flew again, his first act was to seek out the memorial sites where fallen dragons were honored. He spent hours at each location, performing aerial displays that served as both celebration and apology to those who could not be restored. By the end of their first year together, Marcus and Zephyros had found and restored flight to 11 dragons across 7 star systems. Each success brought new hope to the survivors and new possibilities for the galaxy. The restored dragons began sharing knowledge that had been locked away for millennia, teachings about space-time manipulation, energy conversion, and technologies that could revolutionize civilization. "We are no longer the last," Zephyros observed as they watched a formation of 6 dragons practice complex aerial maneuvers above a binary star system. "For the first time since the war, I believe our people have a future." "What's next?" Marcus asked, still amazed by how routine interdimensional travel had become for him. "Next, we find the Dragon Council survivors and convince them to resume their duties as guardians and teachers of the younger species. The galaxy has spent too long without proper guidance. There are civilizations struggling with problems that dragons solved eons ago. Wars that could be prevented with proper mediation. Discoveries waiting to be made if the right knowledge is shared." Marcus nodded, understanding the scope of what they were proposing. "We're not just restoring individual dragons, we're trying to restart an entire galactic civilization." "Indeed. And at the center of it all, a human engineer who proved that the impossible is merely the difficult waiting for the right approach. I think the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place." 5 years after Marcus first discovered Zephyros in the Crystal Cave, the galaxy had transformed in ways that historians would debate for centuries. The restoration of dragonflight had triggered a renaissance of knowledge, technology, and cooperation between species that had isolated themselves for millennia. The Dragon Council had been re-established on the ancient world of Dracorium, where crystalline spires reached toward the stars like frozen lightning. 23 dragons now served as mediators, teachers, and guardians of galactic civilization. Their ability to travel instantly between star systems made them the perfect ambassadors for species that had never managed faster than light. Communication. Marcus stood on the council chamber's observation deck, watching dragons arrive for the monthly assembly. Each approach was a masterpiece of controlled physics, beings the size of starships appearing from wormholes with grace that defied every law of motion. The sight never got old, even after years of working alongside them. "The Andromedans have agreed to share their consciousness transfer technology," Zephyros reported, settling onto the platform with the casual precision that Marcus had learned to expect. "In exchange, Thessarian will teach them proper stellar engineering techniques." Their star-lifting project was about to trigger a supernova. Another catastrophe avoided, Marcus noted, updating his records. His official title was Chief Technology Advisor to the Dragon Council, but in practice he served as translator between draconic concepts and younger species understanding. "What about the Centauri situation?" "Resolved." Morvac mediated a 3-way territorial dispute that had been escalating toward system-wide war. Sometimes all that's needed is an impartial voice that can't be threatened or bribed. Zephyros paused, his golden eyes focusing on something beyond the observation deck. "Speaking of which, we have visitors." A human fleet was approaching Dracorium, 12 ships that represented the largest Earth expedition ever sent beyond the local cluster. Marcus felt a familiar mixture of pride and nervousness as he recognized the lead vessel's configuration. Admiral Chen, his sister, was commanding the fleet. "Still strange to think that first contact with dragons happened because my little brother fell down a cave," Admiral Chen remarked an hour later as they sat in the council chamber's reception area. "The diplomatic corps has been trying to figure out proper protocol for months." "There is no protocol," Marcus laughed. Dragons don't care about formality, they care about results. Show them something interesting, solve a problem they couldn't handle, or ask intelligent questions about their work. Everything else is just noise. The formal reception between humanity and the Dragon Council was unlike any diplomatic meeting in recorded history. Instead of negotiating treaties or trade agreements, both sides focused on sharing knowledge and capabilities. Dragons offered to help humanity explore distant galaxies, while humans contributed engineering techniques that could enhance draconic technology. "Your species thinks differently than most," Keth observed to Admiral Chen during a break in the proceedings. "Dragons approach problems through intuition and accumulated wisdom. Humans use systematic analysis and creative problem-solving. The combination is remarkably effective." "My brother proved that," Admiral Chen replied, glancing toward where Marcus was deep in technical discussion with 3 dragons about quantum field manipulation. "He's always been able to see solutions that others miss." "Indeed. He has restored not just our flight but our purpose. We are no longer refugees from a lost war, but guardians of a galaxy full of potential." The meeting concluded with an agreement that would reshape both civilizations. Earth would establish permanent research stations near major dragon worlds, while dragons would take active roles in human exploration and development projects. More importantly, both species committed to sharing the restoration techniques with any other dragons that might be discovered in distant galaxies. "There's something else," Zephyros told Marcus privately as the human fleet prepared to depart. "Long-range scouts have detected quantum signatures consistent with Shadow Fleet technology in the Andromeda Galaxy. It appears that some of their forces survived the war and have been building strength in isolation." Marcus felt a chill despite the warm chamber. How long before they might return? Unknown. Centuries, perhaps millennia. But when they do, they will face a very different galaxy than the one they left. Dragons who can fly. Species working together instead of in isolation, and humans with the determination to solve impossible problems. Zephyros's expression was serene despite the implications. "Let them come. We will be ready." The next morning brought news that vindicated Zephyros's confidence. Long-range sensors had detected draconic energy signatures in 3 previously unexplored galaxies, indicating that dragons had spread much further than anyone realized before the Shadow Fleet War. Each discovery represented hundreds, possibly thousands of dragons who might still be alive but flightless. "It seems our work is just beginning," Marcus mused as he prepared for another interdimensional journey. His equipment had evolved considerably over the years, incorporating draconic technology that made the original bypass system look primitive. But the principles remained the same. Find the problem, understand its mechanism, and develop a creative solution. "Our work will never truly end," Zephyros replied, opening a wormhole that revealed stars in patterns no human had ever seen. "The universe is vast and full of wonders, but also challenges that require fresh perspectives and determined effort." Dragons alone grew complacent. Humans alone lacked the knowledge of eons. Together we can achieve what neither could accomplish in isolation. As they stepped through the portal toward their next impossible rescue mission, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed since that storm-lashed night when he first detected strange energy readings from Mount Xerion. He had set out to solve a technical problem and ended up helping to restore an ancient civilization while forging bonds between species separated by millions of years of evolution. Behind them, dragons soared through the skies of Dracorium, their songs creating aurora displays that painted the heavens in celebration of restored hope. Ahead lay galaxies full of grounded dragons waiting for proof that flight could be regained, that curses could be broken, and that the impossible was merely another engineering challenge waiting for the right approach. The galaxy had learned an important lesson from a human engineer and a broken dragon. No problem is truly unsolvable if you're willing to think differently about the solution. Sometimes all it takes is someone who refuses to accept that impossible means impossible, who sees technology where others see magic, and who believes that any system can be fixed if you understand how it works. The age of grounded dragons was over. The age of renewed wonder had begun, and at its heart was a simple truth that would echo across the cosmos for generations to come. Human ingenuity combined with draconic wisdom could overcome any obstacle the universe presented. The stars themselves seemed to sing in approval as dragon and human disappeared into the infinite possibilities of space, carrying hope to those who had forgotten how to dream of flight.